Almost there. Chapter 43, Tiana. Tiana was out of breath by the time she reached Trem. Still, a cry of relief broke free as the supper club came into view. She needed to be there, even though the thought of having to get through an entire dinner service, cooking, entertaining patrons, cleaning up after all was done, made her want to collapse. She needed the comfort of the place she and her daddy had built. She cut through the alley that led to the back entrance of the supper club, but before she entered, Tiana took a moment to collect herself. A jagged, painful sense of betrayal threatened to overwhelm her at the thought of Miss Rose Lond, lying to her all this time. She considered the woman something of a friend. Had Miss Rose been pretending during their neighborly chats? Was Tiana just a pawn in some game between Rosalind and Facilier? A game she never agreed to play in the first place? Maybe she should have stuck around and demanded the woman explain herself. Miss Rose owed her at least that, which was much after months of deceiving her. She swiped at the angry tears that she hadn't even realized had started to fall. It was imperative she not show any sign that anything was amiss. Given the time of day, her daddy was likely in there preparing for that night's dinner service. If he had an inkling of what was going on, Tiana wasn't sure what he would do, or what Facilier would do in retaliation. Just get through tonight, she told herself. Take this prep time to think things through, to find another solution. She'd figure out how to take care of the shadow man on her own, without Rosalind's help. When she walked inside, she spotted her daddy standing at the prep station. Her dark mood immediately lifted at the sight of him. "Hi there, baby girl," he called, his ever-present smile, as warm as a comforting hug. "You're back from seeing your friend? How is she?" "Hey, Daddy," Tiana answered, then walked over and gave him a kiss on the cheek. "Yes, I am. My friend. Well," she waved that off. "It's not important. It's so good to see you, Daddy." "You saw me the day before yesterday," he laughed as he expertly diced bell peppers into uniform pieces. "But it's always good to see you," Tiana said. "It's something I've learned to never take for granted." "That's a good lesson to learn," he said. He glanced over at her and frowned. "You get caught up in a storm or something, baby girl?" Tiana looked down at her filthy clothes. Maybe she should have gone home first. Maybe Charlotte had the right idea. She needed a bath. "I did," she said. "The rain caught me on my way back to New Orleans. I'll get cleaned up soon." She walked over to where her apron hung on the hook near the rear of the kitchen. "But I should start on the gumbo before I do. Once it's cooking, Addie Mae could watch it while I run home and bathe." "If she ever shows up," her daddy said. "I haven't seen or heard from her all day." Tiana's fingers fumbled in the middle of tying the apron around her waist. That didn't sound like Addie Mae. "I wonder if she fell ill," she murmured. She wished Addie Mae had a telephone, but Southern Bell's services was still a rarity in most households in the city. "Let me get to this gumbo, and then I'll see if I can find little Johnny Taylor to go check on her." She scrubbed the dirt from her hands and underneath her nails, then filled her daddy's big gumbo pot with water. Together they took it over to the stove. She then made quick work of chopping up the remaining vegetables and adding them to the pot, along with chicken and andouille sausage. A now familiar sense of dread climbed up Tiana's spine as she walked over to the pantry and moved the jar of green beans to the side. There behind it stood the small vial filled with the potion Facilier had given her, next to the larger one he'd shoved upon her at the market. The potion meant to keep her daddy alive, next to the one he wanted her to put into all her dishes to keep their deal going. "Facilier doesn't have the powers you think he has. He's the one who has been manipulating you." Rosalind's earlier assertion pried at a question that had puzzled Tiana since Thursday night, when Facilier had suddenly changed the rules of their deal. She'd balked at the flimsy excuse he'd given her as to why she needed to start adding the larger portion to all her dishes. It hadn't made sense, and he had never explained the reasoning behind it. "He doesn't have the powers you think he has," Tiana whispered as she continued to stare at the vials. Could it be? Could that be one thing Rosalind had been honest about? For months had Facilier used whatever in that small bottle to control her, not her daddy? Had he convinced her to do his bidding, not with magic, but with his words, his illusions? He was a master manipulator. She slid the beans back into place and left the potions, both of them, where they were. His batch could not include Facilier's contribution. You okay in there, baby girl? Tiana cleared her throat. Yeah, Daddy, I'll be right out. She left the pantry and returned to her gumbo, trying her hardest to quell her unease. She could very well risk everything she loved with the decision she'd just made. But this was more than just a gut feeling. She knew that Facilier had deceived her more than once with his mind games, tricking her into thinking she was standing in the restaurant of her dreams or that he'd harmed her parents. Well, her daddy was right there in the kitchen, alive and healthy. Tiana went over to the stove and lowered the fire under the pot. Daddy, I'm going to let this simmer for a while I look for little Johnny. I'll send him to check on Addie Mae. She lucked out and found little Johnny Taylor just a couple of blocks away from the restaurant. Tiana paid him a nickel to run over to Addie Mae's house and returned with word as to why she had not shown up for work. When she returned to the restaurant, she found her daddy standing over the gumbo pot. It isn't burning, is it? Tiana asked. He looked over his shoulder, a sheepish grin in his handsome face. No, you caught me stealing a taste. Tiana burst out laughing, something she couldn't imagine herself doing just an hour before. James sipped the brown liquid from a big cooking spoon. That's a good gumbo. He took another sip, then broke out in an awful, blood-racking cough. Panic set her running. Daddy! Tiana grabbed the spoon from him and tossed it aside. What had she done? Had she taken a chance with that potion? I'm fine. Her daddy pounded his chest, his smile returning. Gumbo just went down the wrong pipe is all. That's what I get for sneaking a taste before it's done. Relief made her muscles weak. Her hand trembled as she covered her forehead with her palm. You scared me. Everything's okay. Don't get yourself so worked up, baby girl. He gestured toward the dining room. Why don't you go out there and get the tables ready for tonight? And then you can head home to wash off and dress for the Big Shrove Monday dinner crowd. I'll do the same once Carol Ann and Jody get here to watch the kitchen. Tiana nodded, but her entire body still hummed with anxiety. Something wasn't right. She felt it in her bones. She entered the dining room and went about straightening the tablecloths and centerpieces. Her hurt and anger came roaring back at the sight of the flowers Miss Rosalind, had given her for the restaurant. As she picked up some petals and had fallen into the table, she had a mind to toss all the flowers away. Same with the paintings hung up around here. She looked over at the most recent one the woman had gifted her and blinked in confusion. She dropped the flower petals and raced to it, her mind unwilling to register what her eyes were clearly saying. Or not saying. Nearly all the people were gone. Of the half-dozen colorfully outfitted Mardi Gras Indians in the original portrait, only one remained. Tiana slowly shook her head as she backed away from the painting. This couldn't be right. Someone was playing tricks on her again. Miss Tiana! Miss Tiana! Little Johnny Taylor rushed through the restaurant's front entrance. Miss Addie Mae is gone, he said. Icy fear wrapped around her heart like a fist. What do you mean she's gone? Was her mother home? Little Johnny nodded. She was. Miss Phyllis said Addie Mae went to fetch some things at the market and was supposed to bring them back home before leaving for work, but she never did. I went to the market, but nobody's there on account of that green stuff growing around everywhere. Tiana's rising panic refused to subside. Thanks, old Johnny, Tiana told the boy, slipping him another nickel. Facilier was behind all of this. She had no doubt about it. Daddy, Tiana called as she entered the kitchen, but she found Carol Ann and Jody there instead. Mr. James just left, Carol Ann said. He said he'll be back in time for the dinner services. Tiana nodded. Have either of you talked to Addie Mae? Both girls shook their heads. Tia! Charlotte burst through the swinging door and into the kitchen. Oh, Tia! Lottie, what's the matter? Tiana captured her friend by her shoulders. She was still wearing her mud-stained trousers. What's going on? It's Big Daddy. He's missing. Tiana's entire body went rigid, while Lottie's shook like a leaf in the middle of a hurricane. What do you mean? What makes you think he's missing? He's not home. Maybe he's at the mill. He's not. Lottie was shaking her head. I just came from there. No one at the mill has seen him either. She walked back into the dining room, cradling her head in her hands. Oh, Tia, I don't know what to do. Just then Naveen and Louie arrived, both looking as if they actually had come through a hurricane. Their clothes were covered in muck, and they reeked of dank, smelly rot. Naveen hooked a thumb toward the door. I don't know what's going on out there, but it looks as if the swamp followed us back here. That slimy green sludge is everywhere. And the fog is worse than ever, Louis piped up. Charlotte turned to him. Naveen, have you seen Big Daddy? Mr. LaBeouf? Yes, no one knows where he is, not even his closest friends. Big Daddy would never just up and leave without telling a single soul where he's going. Alfred said he's been gone since this morning. It isn't like Big Daddy to leave without saying anything to anybody. Don't get yourself worked up, Tiana told her, running her hand up and down her friend's arm to soothe her, even though her own nerves still felt as though they were twisting and tying into knots. What's that? Charlotte pointed to tiny specks of dirt that dotted the tablecloth. Tiana went to dust them away, and dozens of bugs took flight. She screeched, running away from the table, but the bugs were suddenly everywhere, swarming around in the same way the mosquitoes had attacked on Saturday. Miss Rose flowers! The winged insects flew out of the center of each buzz and whizzed around the dining room like a tornado. Terror shot through Tiana as she thought about the mosquitoes at Congo Square. She scrambled into the kitchen. Shut everything off, Tiana called out to Carol Ann and Jody. Just shut off the stove and leave that food there. Get out. Get out.